Welcome. We'll be continuing our series on expected questions. Now, in the previous expected questions, we have seen some of the very important topics, like you have International Solar Alliance, the concept of most favored nations. We have talked about the various military exercises, India's role, India's economy, how it has been working. So those were some of the major points that we have discussed. We would be bringing in more important points for today, and then towards the very end, we would be having a quick summary of the important topics that could be probable part of your question paper. Now, for example, Project Dhoop is a very interesting project. From the name, it does not become clear, but it is a project where school assemblies should be held during the afternoon to have more vitamin D intake, as a proposition given by FSSAI. So that's very important. The next is BIMSTEC. So BIMSTEC is the Bay of Bengal initiative for multi-sectoral technical and economic cooperation. Under this, a first joint military exercise, which was known as MILEX 18, has been released. Now, BIMSTEC is a group of 7 countries of South Asia, which was established in 1997 with headquarters at Dhaka. So these international organizations become important. In the previous class, we talked about African Union. So African Union is important. So sometimes there are 2 to 3 direct questions which are based on the major international organizations, their establishment, and the organizations that were in news for some reason or the other become a part of your question paper. For example, if we look onto the history, you have the Montego-Chelmsford reform, so 100th year of that reform, so that reform becomes very important for this year. So those are the kind of things you need to know before your examination. The next is the Afghan rail project. Now this would be a 650-kilometer long railway line which would be connecting the major cities of Afghanistan, mainly the Mazar-e-Sharif and Herat, and later on it would be extended to the region of Kabul. You would have the Shahid Bahishti port in Chabar, Iran, where the construction could be further extended. So this Afghan rail project would provide regional connectivity to these areas as well, and along with that the air corridors would also be expanded. Now G4 and India are moving towards multilateralism or commitment to multilateralism and bringing in reform for the UN Security Council. So Germany and Japan contribute for nearly 1/4 of the UN budget, and the other 4 countries basically have 1/5 of the total world population. So G4 ministers are trying to bring in the compensatory reforms and changes in the UN Security Council. Now, India has signed COMCAS. Now, COMCAS is the Communications Compatibility and Security Agreement. Previously, it was known as the Communication Information on Security Memorandum of Agreement. There are 2 other agreements, which are Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Agreement and BICSA. So, along with these 2, you have the COMCAS that has been established, and this validity for the COMCAS is for 10 years. So, India has signed 2 other, that's the one is the Logistic LIMA, which is the Logistic Exchange Memorandum of Agreement, and the other is the General Security of Military Information Agreement. So both of those are again important. Then 2+2 meaning has been held between external and defense ministries of India on one side and the respective secretariats from United States. So it's basically India-US defense tie, COMCAS hotlines between defense and forest ministers between the 2 countries, and a tri-service military exercise between the 2 nations. So those are the agreements that have been part of the 2+2 dialogue. So very important. It's a kind of strategic trade authorization. So that's important. The next is Intermediate Range Nuclear Force, which is known as INF Treaty. Now US has decided to cancel this treaty between Russia and America that was there since 1987, and it has announced to withdraw this decision. So withdraw the decision from INF Treaty. So that's again a very important development between the 2 we could say the superpowers of the world. The next is Moscow format. Now Russia has hosted the regional conference on Afghanistan, which was known as Moscow format. The idea is to bring in a reconciliation process between Taliban and Afghan authorities. So the need for Taliban was the major issue. So Afghan-led, Afghan-owned principle was basically being led by Russia. The next is the concept of Silk Route. So Silk Route has been a new debatable topic. Now we are talking about the Ocean Sea Route, Silk Route, that is another important thing that we have been focusing on. So those two developments have been important. Then there is another important development is Saudi Arabia's development. Now in line with the oil crisis, it has been seen that the countries need to work on the alternative avenue. So as a result, Saudi Arabia is working on a national industrial development and logistics program. So that's a way to diversify and transform its economy. So post oil age, what could be the developments that could be done? So energy partnership and bringing in more global innovation centers to Saudi Arabia has been one of the major centers. Now India, Saudi, Pakistan triangle is important. Saudi Arabia is India's fourth largest trading partner, and therefore the visit of Saudi Arabia's prince to India has been important. Now Saudi Arabia is one of the three largest suppliers of oil to India. So the statements and the policies that we exchange become very, very important. The Wuhan meet is again important. India and China are holding deals for combating the global terrorism. Then you also have the Vienna Convention. Now Vienna Convention is an international treaty which defines the framework for consular relations. Now these relations are between the independent states. Recently we have highlighted Article 36 because of the relationship between India and Pakistan pertaining to Kulbhushan Yadav case. So this has become very, very important for your GS paper 2 mains section. So you can bring in the case studies from Article 36 Vienna Convention. India and Fiji have been important in terms of relationship because nearly 37% of the inhabitants of the island of Fiji are of Indian origin. So India has a good representation in Pacific. So development in terms of defense, military, humanitarian assistance and disaster management have been some key issues. Now as a humanitarian gesture, India and Pakistan have released the list of prisoners so far in India and Pakistan. So that's available in the snapshot here. So you can just have a glimpse at it. Rhynesia dialogue is very, very important. Rhynesia dialogue basically is an annual conference that occurs on geopolitics and understanding the geoeconomics of the world. This was recently held in Delhi. A fair value of innovation was the title for this time, where the policymakers were exploring to work on research, advocacy, partnership and various programs. So that's a very, very important dialogue that has come up. This is again important for your mains examination as well. So the next is India-South Africa relations. Now the term is very interesting, Red Fort Declaration, but nothing to do with Red Fort. It is just a strategic partnership between India and South Africa, which was known as Red Fort Declaration. It was signed in 1997 when Dr. Dev Gowda was the Prime Minister of India. Now this was a 3-year plan which talked about security cooperation, trade and investment, agriculture and development. However, later on this was revised. So this has been important. Now again this could be a probable question because Red Fort Declaration, the name is not very, very clear. So if you are talking about Red Fort Declaration, the first thing that would come to your mind is Red Fort. In no case you would have South Africa that would come to your mind. So therefore it's very, very important, a very tricky question it could be. Now China and India are working towards an approach where they talk about 5C approach. So 5C talks about communication, opening the avenues for cooperation, contacts, coordination and control, and only then there could be management that could be enhanced, the management of differences that could be brought in. So China is talking about importing more sugar, non-basmati rice and high quality medicines from India in order to reduce the trade imbalance, and that's one of the major developments that has been seen between India and China. So with this we have covered some of the very important expected questions. We would be also covering some of the important locations that have been in news so far. So stay tuned. Have a wonderful day ahead.